As Russian forces continue their assault on Ukraine, Americans are about to feel that pain in their wallets as energy costs are set to explode. My first guest tonight is a member of Congress. She's on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and she says President Biden should have listened to Republicans' concerns last year when the administration greenlit Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline and killed our own pipeline. Joining us now, we're happy to have her back, Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. Congresswoman, Ukraine under attack by Russian forces. What do you think the U.S. position should be as we are watching this from the distance?
Well, certainly many of us in the Republican Party believe that the president did not make a decisive, strong decision to implement crippling sanctions on Russia's economy. We believe that he is held out in terms of putting sanctions on Putin himself. They should also be looking to focus on the Russian central bank, on the oil, gas, mineral mining industries. And we also believe that we should be looking at the SWIFT banking system and eliminating Russia from that. It was these crippling sanctions that could have made a difference had he imposed them over a month ago, when I and so many of my colleagues were saying we needed to be proactive and ensure that there were deterrents put in place. It seems that this president, once again, is being reactive, unfortunately, and is giving Putin that opportunity to move swiftly. I think right now there's still some time to put some more crippling sanctions. We need to ensure that we're working with our allies to do that in that region. Certainly, we could have also, and should have also, provided more lethal and non-lethal weapons and equipment to the Ukrainian resistance forces. But I think one of the last things that we have to learn from this, and we need to learn it quick, is that we must reinstate our domestic energy production so we are independent. This is something that is so critical. If you see why Europe is so vulnerable to Russia right now, is because they rely on Russia for 40% of its natural gas. And we can't be in that position ever. And in order for us to be energy independent and which is, of course, energy independence means national security. For us to have that, we need to repeal some of the executive orders put in place by President Biden, including reinstating the Keystone pipeline, which would bring in so many more barrels of oil than we currently get from Russia. And, of course, removing those executive orders that put a ban on leasing of federal lands. We need to reignite the production and exploration in this country immediately for ourselves, and so our allies like Europe have an alternative to relying on Russia.
I mean, we went from energy independence and being an energy exporter just a little over a year ago under President Trump to now seeing the president beg OPEC countries, please drill more oil. We need more energy. And it's just disappointing. Into that vacuum comes Putin, who decided that, hey, I've got a great opportunity to be the supplier for Europe. Do you think that has played any or a major role in giving Putin the chutzpah to say, I'm going to go into Ukraine because right now Europe needs me. They need my energy, and they won't want to stop me?
Sure, it was the equivalent of the Green New Deal advocates in Europe that made Europe so reliant on Russia for its natural gas and oil needs. And I think that is exactly what you're seeing happening here in the United States. And that is why the president did cancel the Keystone pipeline, because he was listening to some of those far left advocates. Look, I'm all for energy diversification, but we cannot invest in, let's say, renewable clean energy at the expense of eliminating and canceling traditional energy sources. We need diversification. And so that is the thing that we're lacking here. And I think it is one of the most critical issues that the United States and those politicians who have advocated for these policies in terms of energy, that they have to learn is that if we're not producing the energy, we're going to be relying on adversaries. That is why Europe is so vulnerable. Also, interestingly enough, and you and I are both supporters of our friends in Israel and Greece and Cyprus, the president and his administration is also pulling back on the Eastern Mediterranean pipeline, which would also bring some energy independence to Europe. And we can't understand why he was so quick to greenlight the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, remove those sanctions that President Trump had in place, cancel our pipeline, and cancel the pipeline of our ally. It just doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't, and I think that's what a lot of us are struggling with. There was a real mixed message that the White House gave out over the last couple of weeks. Vice President Kamala Harris said that sanctions work. She went over to Europe to say that if Russia does anything with Ukraine, we'll put sanctions in place because that will be a deterrent. And then 3 days ago, President Biden comes out and says, well, we don't think sanctions will really do that much. Which is it?
Well, I think that the real crippling sanctions on Putin, on the Russia Central Bank, on the energy and the mining industries, these do work. The problem is that they were supposed to be done a month ago, because it does take, as the White House is now saying, 30 days to kick in. So to wait until after the invasion was nonsensical. We should have been proactive and worked on it over a month ago, as so many members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee had suggested and had been urging him to do.
The former National Security Advisor, H.R. McMaster, has made the comment. He said this is going to go on and on until Putin is met with strength. Many people have assessed it the same way, that Putin is a bully, he's a thug, he's a criminal, that the only thing he understands is a hard punch in the face. Is that a fair assessment of what it takes to get him to realize that this does not end well for him, even if he thinks he's going to somehow conquer Ukraine?
Well, I think one thing is for sure. I think somebody like Putin does look for strength, and certainly he is testing this current administration. The reality is that if President Trump were in office today, that this invasion of Ukraine would not be happening, because they knew that President Trump was someone who would take decisive action. He would have certainly implemented sanctions early on, and he wouldn't have ever stopped our energy independence, exploration, and production here in the United States. So there is a difference in administration, sadly. And the other thing here that has occurred was exactly 6 months ago that we lost 13 soldiers in Afghanistan due to the incompetence of this administration, the idea to close the air base prior to the evacuation of civilians and our U.S. citizens. That was also another mistake. And I think that somebody like Putin understands that this administration doesn't have it all together. Even from a Department of State perspective, they are so disorganized as we are trying to help American citizens and people get out of the country. The embassy just took off and left American citizens in a war zone once again.
While all the eyes of the world are focused on Russia and Ukraine, the other part of the world where maybe we ought to be paying attention is China and Taiwan. There's a good possibility that the Chinese are licking their chops and thinking, what an opportunity. It looks like the whole free world is focused on Ukraine, and they're not really stopping Putin. They certainly wouldn't have the power to stop China if China decided to go in and try to overrun Taiwan. You're a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Congress. Is that a worry that you have, and do your colleagues share that concern?
We have been warning about this since the days of Afghanistan, that the way we handled Afghanistan under this administration would embolden some of our other adversaries to act more aggressive. And that is exactly how we're seeing it being played out in Ukraine. And I do believe the way these next few days of how we handle Ukraine are pivotal and incredibly important to prevent not only a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, but also to ensure that Putin doesn't look to go into some of our NATO countries, these smaller Balkan states that are vulnerable. It could be very vulnerable if NATO and the United States don't take important measures today.
There are 200,000 Jewish people who are living in Ukraine. You and I have been to Israel together, so I know you are a strong supporter of the Jewish nation. A lot of support is trying to get to those Jewish people in Ukraine. There's a good chance Israel may play a role of rescue in all of this, trying to get some of those folks extricated before Putin's forces move in. And yet Putin pretends that Ukraine is being run by Nazis, which I find head-scratching since Zelensky, the president, is in fact Jewish.
Yeah, it's such dangerous rhetoric, and unfortunately, it's a reminiscent of what we see today in American politics, where politicians and people, if you don't agree with them, all of a sudden you're being labeled as somebody sympathetic to fascism or Nazism. It is really dangerous rhetoric, and it also minimizes the meaning of those words, those terms, those experiences that millions of Jewish people lost their life to. And we can never mischaracterize what it means, what the Holocaust meant, what Nazism is. When AOC talks about the southern border and comparing it to concentration camps, that is very dangerous rhetoric, particularly for young people today who may not be as familiar with history. We need to make sure that they're educated and understand what these terms, what these meanings mean, and the people who suffered so greatly as a result of it.
Speaking of dangerous rhetoric, Mitt Romney this week said something that I just don't even know how to understand. He blamed the short-sightedness, his words, of former President Trump's America First agenda for what's happening in Ukraine. Congresswoman, maybe it makes more sense to you than it does to me, but I'm not sure how President Trump should be blamed for putting America first when he's president of the U.S. And secondly, how in the world that somehow is the reason that Ukraine is being overrun by a Russian military right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely outrageous, quite frankly. And as I said earlier, if President Trump were in office today, this would not be occurring. Putin would not have taken this aggressive action. He would not have invaded Ukraine. I believe that strongly, and that is because President Trump led with strength, and peace through strength, as we know, has been what Republican Party believes in. I also believe that President Trump would be putting more pressure on Putin right now, not just in terms of sanctions, but by being energy independent. Could potentially be giving Europe an alternative, so they wouldn't be beholden to Russia, and Russia would not have that leverage today. So I think putting America first, making sure that we are securing our borders, making sure that we are taking care of our energy needs domestically, not relying on foreign, particularly adversaries, is incredibly important. And if you look at everything that this president has done, it is what has shown the world that our leadership today is weak. Rejoining the Paris Accord without requiring China and India to operate on a level playing field. Re-entering WHO without demanding accountability for China unleashing this virus on the world, and not investigating and having anyone held accountable for the actions that took place during this Afghan withdrawal. All of these things have consequences, and the world is watching. And that is why I believe that some of the policies and decisions put in place by President Biden and the slow response to many things, the reactive response, not being proactive, has led to where we are today. Appeasement has led to where we are today.
Congresswoman, thank you very much for your time and your insights. We want to say to our audience, if you'd like to learn more about Representative Nicole Malliotakis, just head over to Huckabee.tv. We have direct connections to her website and to all the ways that you can get in touch with her, and follow her on social media.